What if Theon killed Balon Greyjoy and pledged the Ironborn to Robb Stark? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Many of you are asking for continuations, so if this video gets 2,000 likes, we will make a part 2. The salty wind howls outside Pyke's Great Hall as Balon Greyjoy finishes examining a crude map of the North one last time as he touches on his invasion of the North.
Father, please, listen to reason. Robb Stark is not our enemy. The North is vast, too vast for us to hold. But together we could...
Together? With the boy who calls himself king? I'd rather toss myself off the bridges of Pyke.
Still dreaming of your wolf pack, little brother? Do you think the North will welcome you back?
If you don't see reason, you'll doom us all. The Starks' allies will be worth more than 100 stolen castles.
You've forgotten what it means to be Ironborn. We take what is ours. Can I count on you, Ironborn, enough to sail with us?
Aye, father.
That is enough to mollify Balon, and the hall soon empties. The Lord of the Pyke is the last to go, walking across a bridge to his private chambers. Below, the sea is roaring while the winds howl and tug at his cloak. The sound is so loud he doesn't notice a hooded figure approaching from behind. A blade flashes in the dim light, plunging into Balon's side. He gasps, staggering backward, his eyes wide with shock. The figure pulls the dagger free and plunges it again into his neck. The old kraken opens his mouth as blood pours out and falls without another word. The hooded figure moves to escape back the way he came, just as the door opens for Theon to step inside with his sword drawn. He roars and charges at him. The assassin whirls aside and tries to slip past him, but Theon tackles him, sending them both sprawling in the hallway. He tears back the hood, revealing the face of Carl the Maid. Victarion enters moments later.
Well done, nephew. You caught this thrall red-handed. I should throw you off right now if you weren't one of my niece's crewmen.
As Victarion drags Carl away, Theon turns to Balon's lifeless body, lying in a pool of blood. He then smiles to himself as he walks away, whispering an old Ironborn song. It was easy to convince Carl to take the dagger. All Theon had to do was promise him a lordship and his blessing to marry his sister when he was king to seal this alliance. Not immediately, of course, but after Carl pays the iron price. Still, it was more than he could have expected under Theon's foolish father. News of Balon's death spreads quickly, with many such as Yara wondering what would happen to Carl. Theon pulls her aside privately, whispering that he could pardon Carl if he supports him in the Kingsmoot. Yara is stunned by this and immediately accuses Theon of ordering his father's death. He reminds Yara that Balon repeatedly denounces his sons and warns that with a Kingsmoot, every Ironborn captain has the right to put his name for consideration, so trying to run against him will only split the votes for the Greyjoys further. A few days later, the Kingsmoot is called by Air and Dampfire. As per tradition, every captain has the right to stake their claim, and they do. Warriors big and small from every house turn up, offering rewards, showing off champions, and recounting deeds of valor. But few fail to live up to the power of Theon's uncle, Victarion. The old warrior promises to lead the Ironborn like his brother and fulfill his plans of invading the North to carve out a kingdom. At first, many cheer at this, but laughter cuts through like a hot knife to butter.
Well spoken, uncle. Truly it was. Especially for a man like you. But what did my father accomplish? A kingdom of humiliation and shame. There is a reason why so many of your brothers and sons aren't here, and it's because of his foolishness. Watch your tongue, boy. Your father promised us a kingdom. Aye. I heard his plan as well. A kingdom in the North. Of what exactly? Tell me, uncle. What are our words? Have you forgotten already? We do not sow. We do not sow. It seems my father is the only one who forgot. If we take the North, it is all that will become of us. Farmers of stony fields who fish in frozen seas. And that is before winter comes. Tell me, are we no better than the small folk? Or are we Ironborn? Men who leave the seas for plunder?
A shout of approval rises from the captains, who all give their opinion. Ironborn.
You will find none of that up north. I've lived there almost as much as I've lived here. A grim land with grimmer people, who are nearly as fierce on land as our warriors are at sea. Nearly.
Laughter rings out from the men who previously watched him with disinterest and now lean closer to hear his words. Theon smiles and welcomes this change. He glances over at his uncles, who both give him a sour look. But it is Yara who concerns him. She hides her expression well, though she stands stiff as a mast.
And right now they offer us their friendship as they pillage the West while the old lion is off at war. The West is where the riches are. So here is what I say. Let us sail these lands and take the gold of Castle Rock and the silks and spices of Lannisport. You've heard my uncle. Now what does my sister have to say?
I say there is a war happening, and the Westermen will not be gone forever. Let's hurry and take the gold right from under the old lion's nose.
This declaration is met with enthusiasm from the captains. They all shout and clash their shields together in the sound that silences Victarion just slightly. The great warrior bows his head respectfully as they declare for Theon. He soon puts his plan into motion, using reports from Robb Stark. Theon knows that he is now pushing into the Westerlands, so he decides to coordinate his plan accordingly. With the Ironborn assembled, Theon decides to organize them into an attack and appease his family. Victarion is sent to strike the first blow, attacking the Lannister fleet at Lannisport and depriving them of the means to defend their coast. After that, Yara will lead the second wave to strike at the coastal territories, taking whatever castles they can. Theon will lead the final wave to take Fair Islands, securing them a base for them to launch future invasions. This plan is met with approval from the captains. Meanwhile, Karl is allowed to join these invasions, with Theon declaring that his crimes will only be forgiven by paying the iron price. Weeks later, the people of Lannisport wake up to the sounds of bells ringing. The golden red banners flutter helplessly in the rising smoke as Balon Greyjoy's fleet tears into Lannisport's harbor. Longships slice through the water, their iron bows crashing into the moored Lannister ships. It doesn't matter whether they are war galleys or merchant ships, the Ironborn pour onto the decks. Screams echo across the harbor as Lannister sailors scramble to arm themselves or leap over the edge to save themselves. Victarion himself leaps onto the deck of the largest ship, the Lion's Pride, roaring like a beast.
Burn it all!
The Ironborn hurl torches onto ships, the flames spreading quickly through the tarred rigging. Those that don't burn are taken, their holds hacked open and their riches carried off. Ironborn captains cheer as Lannisport's fleet is reduced to burning wreckage. The harbor is a graveyard of sinking ships, broken masts, and charred bodies floating in the water. Meanwhile, Yara Greyjoy's troops strike like a viper. Under the cover of darkness, her longships land silently on rocky shores, their crews disembarking like shadows. The Ironborn sweep through the villages and keep moving with deadly efficiency. At Banefort, the defenders manage to spot the approaching raiders and light the warning beacons, but Yara's forces are undeterred. The Ironborn scale the walls under a hail of arrows, their shields raised in a tight formation. Karl the Maid leads the charge up the battlements, his sword flashing as he cuts down the first guardsman to oppose him. He creates an opening for Yara, and her closest warriors follow. The defenders' cries for reinforcements are drowned out by the Ironborn's war cries. By dawn, Banefort is a smoldering ruin. The banners of the Kraken fly over the castle's towers, and its vaults are emptied of gold and supplies. Yara wipes the blood from her blade and turns to Karl.
Not bad for a traitor.
A former traitor. At this rate, I'll be a lord soon enough.
The scene repeats itself along the coast and in Windhall. Every keep they strike falls in hours, the defenders overwhelmed by the Ironborn's relentless assault. This time, Karl leads the attack on Windhall, ambushing its defenders with a feigned retreat and taking the keep, paying the iron price many times over. Theon Greyjoy's fleet sails through the choppy waters of the Sunset Sea, their approach masked by the mist rolling in from the west and by the first two waves of his uncle and sister. The Fair Islands come into view as the sun rises, their rocky cliffs and fertile fields shrouded in soft golden light. Theon stands at the prow of his flagship and waves his sword. The Ironborn disembark swiftly, moving through the villages like a storm, breaking down doors and dragging out captives. The resistance is minimal. Most soldiers have been called away to fight for the Lannisters. Those who remain are cut down without mercy. Theon leads the charge into the main village. A few regional defenders and hastily assembled militia faces him. He rides these small folk down while his reavers rush in behind him. The village's wealth, casks of wine, bolts of fine cloth, and gold coins, is piled onto the longships. By the end of the day, the Fair Islands are stripped bare. Theon surveys his victory from its castle. He looks down at the smoking ruins and the Ironborn longships, their holds overflowing with plunder. Soon after, the entire northern coast of the Westerlands belongs to the Ironborn, while Robb's army marches practically unopposed on the field. Castle after castle, village after village, falls after them. This places immense pressure on Tywin to relieve his homeland, as many of his lords threaten to desert. Without the Lannister or royal fleet, Tywin realizes there is only one force on the western coast that can challenge the northern force's strength at sea: the Red Wine Fleet. Thankfully, both his sons, Sir Hobart and Hobber, were in King's Landing and were hostages of the king. Tywin writes to Lord Paxer Redwine, telling him if that he were to send his fleet out against the Ironborn, he would persuade Cersei to free his sons. He points out that since the Ironborn has not declared for Renly, he is not technically breaking his oath as a vassal, and if the Westerlands should fall, Theon's reavers might turn their attention south. Soon after, Renly dies, and many of his forces go over to Stannis, giving him the numbers to march to King's Landing. Although Tywin tries to win the Tyrells to his side, they reject this offer, as his recent defeats leave them skeptical of Tywin's chances, and they return home to watch the war play out. Soon, Castle Rock remains the only castle defiant in the northern Westlands. Facing little to no resistance, Robb lays siege to the Lannister stronghold and requests aid from Theon. The King of the Iron Islands lands on a nearby peninsula, capturing Case to secure his supply lines before joining Robb. Victarion does the same with a portion of the Iron Fleet, using the large longships to blockade Casterly Rock. However, this proves to be a target even the King in the North and Iron Islands struggles with, as the Golden Lion of House Lannister still flies defiantly over Casterly Rock. Below the imposing cliffs, the Ironborn launch sortie after sortie into the cliffside, and though no one denies their bravery, their efforts to besiege the castle drag on. Smoke rises from skirmishes as Balon Greyjoy's forces press the siege. Victarion stands atop a rise, overlooking the battlefield. His longships, larger and heavier than typical raiders, form a blockade along the coastline, cutting off the rock from any naval relief. But the castle is well stocked, and they can last years without resupply. The Lord Captain only has one answer to this: launching attack after attack on the walls to try and bleed their forces dry. Robb Stark takes a more cautious approach, trying to build siege weapons that will batter down the walls. But this strategy will take time. The Ironborn launch another assault, scaling the steep approach to the rock's gates. Rams batter against the heavy iron-banded wood, while archers loose flaming arrows at the battlements above. Boiling oil rains down on the attackers, forcing them to retreat amid screams of agony. Yet, each failed assault chips away at the defenders' resolve, and Victarion is content to grind them down. Farther south, the Ironborn not committed to the siege of Casterly Rock raided the coast with their typical brutality. Small fishing villages and undefended castles are ransacked, their inhabitants either slaughtered or taken captive. Now the southern Westerlands face the same terror as their brothers up north at Craighall, Clegane's Keep, and Cornfield. But as the longships return to their base at Lannisport and Fair Islands, laden with plunder, their lookout spots sails on the horizon. At first, they think it's a gaggle of merchant ships, and the Ironborn cheer in anticipation, but that excitement soon turns to surprise as the lookout notices their sigil, a cluster of grapes on purple.
Red wines! It's the Red Wine Fleet!
Lord Paxter Redwine commands a squadron of 100 galleys strong as they serve through the waters in perfect formation, their banners fluttering proudly as they sail forward. It should normally be no problem for the Ironborn longships to escape, but now they are laden with loot. Their ships are slow and cannot outmatch them. Instead, some turn to fight, crashing against the large galleys. Wood splinters and oars snap as their rams strike each other. Here, Ironborn warriors try to leap onto the war galleys, slaying crewmen and trying to disrupt their formation, but these are fleeting successes. More often than not, it is the longships who are facing the wrath of the enemy ships. Ballista bolts and arrows from archers rain down on them, smashing their ships into kindling. Those who aren't destroyed are hit with grappling hooks that bite into the sides of the Ironborn longships, and heavily armored marines pour onto their decks. The sea becomes a graveyard of broken ships and floating corpses. Only a handful of Ironborn ships manage to slip away, their oars churning the water in frantic retreat. These ships hurry back to Lannisport, Fair Islands, or Case to report what they saw. One captain manages to reach the blockade of Castle Rock.
A Greenlander fleet has appeared from the south, 100 strong, bearing the sigil of House Redwine.
Victarion's face darkens as the memory of his defeat on Fair Islands is still fresh in his mind.
Send word to the remaining fleet. They are to regroup and hold their position. Inform my nephew of this development.
This is a serious blow to their war effort, and Theon is forced to shift his strategy. Rather than engage the large Redwine fleet directly, Theon instead orders them to hold up at the harbor and sends scouts to determine where the Redwines will strike next, as they will likely try to cut off their supply lines. Once he learns which port they will strike out, he will have the other fleets attack from behind. However, this also means that they must break off the siege of Castle Rock, although Robb wishes to capture it. He cannot do so without cutting them off from the sea. Reluctantly, he calls it off and continues his campaign over land. Eventually, he gets his answer, as the Redwine sails soon appear over Fair Islands. The sun raises over Fair Isles, but its light brings no warmth. Theon Greyjoy stands on the walls of Fair Castle, his gaze fixed on the distant Redwine fleet. He clenches his fists as the Ironborn scurry below, hastily reinforcing barricades and preparing for the onslaught.
They'll come at us hard. They'll try to choke us, starve us out. But we're Ironborn. We've held the seas, and we'll hold this rock.
The Ironborn longships, swift and deadly, dart from the harbor like kraken rising from the depths. They smash into the Redwine ships on the outskirts of the fleet. Grappling hooks latch onto the deck, and Ironborn axes cut through the wood and flesh alike. The Redwine fleet responds with disciplined precision. Heavy galleys close in, their marines overwhelming the lighter Ironborn vessels with sheer numbers. But most longships retreat before the galleys close in. Those that don't are crushed beneath the heavier ships. Still, the Ironborn prove a terror to the isolated warships. Reachmen who do make landfall find Theon's men waiting in ambush. The forests and cliffs make the perfect spot to strike from. Hidden high in the cliffs, archers unleash volleys of arrows while Ironborn charges from the tree line with axes and swords, driving attackers back into the surf. Across a dozen potential landing zones, the beaches run red with blood, but the Redwines keep coming. For days, Theon holds them back and leads some of these sorties himself. But by the end, the Redwines secure 2 beachheads and begin deploying their soldiers. Theon retreats to Faircastle as he watches the Redwine banners rise over the distant beaches. The Ironborn garrison within the castle is small, their faces grim as they prepare for a siege. Supplies are low, and the Redwine fleet controls the waters around the island. He already sent ravens to Victarion and Yara, expecting them any day now. It is only a matter of time. As the Redwines tighten their noose around Faircastle, a lone longship sails into the harbor. Its black sails bearing the Kraken banner before the noose fully closes. Theon's heart lifts, thinking it must be from Yara or Victarion, promising aid. But as the longship docks, a familiar figure steps out onto the pier. It's a Greyjoy, but not the one he wished. His uncle wears a dark patch over his evil eye, but his smirk is enough to unsettle Theon. Despite that, he spreads his hands out in greeting, as if expecting an embrace.
So, this is what a king looks like. Hiding behind castle walls while his enemy closes in.
The king defends what's theirs, and I don't recall you being invited.
Invited? The storm is not invited. It is not ordered. It goes where it pleases. And today it wished to see a wolf's pup sailing.
I am no one's pup. I'm the king of the Iron Islands.
A king, you say? Ah, yes. I've heard of what happened to my dear brother. I must admit, I'm impressed. It seemed like you learned to bare your teeth, little pup.
And you call yourself a storm? Yet all I see is a one-eyed fool standing alone on an island full of enemies.
Is that so? Then why is it you who trembles like a boy?
Before Theon can react, Euron's dagger plunges into his stomach. Theon gasps, stumbling back as pain blooms through his body. He drops to his knees and looks up at him.
Are you mad? You're a kinslayer. Accused in the eyes of men and gods.
I am no mere man to fear gods. I am the storm. I am the god.
Theon collapses to his knees, his vision darkening as Euron twists the blade. The last thing he sees is the crow's eye looming over him. He pulls his patch aside to reveal his evil eye. Euron orders his crew to do the same to the garrison. The hall erupts into chaos as Euron's men pour into the castle. The Ironborn defenders are slaughtered to the last, their cries silenced beneath the crow's eye's laughter. He sails off just as the Red Wine army arrives and batters down the walls. There they find the bodies of the fallen Ironborn, all except Theon's. In the distance they see the Silence sailing off and assumes that the Ironborn were so desperate they slaughtered each other to escape. Still, this is a much-needed victory for the Lannisters, as it hampers the Ironborn's ability to resupply their forces in the Westerlands. But they do not have long to enjoy it, as in the east, Stannis captures King's Landing after his victory in the Blackwater, resulting in the deaths of Cersei, Tyrion, and Joffrey. The only consolation is Tommen manages to escape to Rosby, where Tywin rescues him and retreats to Duskendale. However, he's trapped between Roose Bolton's host in the north and Stannis's in the south. Euron sails back to the Iron Islands with Theon's body, claiming he was able to save it after the Red Winds attacked Fair Isles. But without an appointed heir, this means that another Kingsmoot must be declared. This deprives Robb of most of his naval strength. The only consolation is that Paxter Redwine does not continue his offensive. With King's Landing taken, Sir Horus is now under the hands of King Stannis, while Sir Hobber was already sent back. Tywin has no leverage. The salty breeze rolls across Naga's Hill, where the Ironborn have gathered beneath the ancient ribs of the great sea beast. Another body joins them as Euron lays out the body of Theon Greyjoy.
This is all that remains of our king. The boy who thought he could be a wolf and a kraken at the same time. The red wines burned Fair Isles, and I alone brought Theon's body back to Pyke. Now we must decide who will lead us.
The lesser men step forward, giving the rewards and shooting their claims. Some manage to drum up a bit of support, others less, but once these finish, Yara steps forward.
I claim the Seastone Chair. I am Yara Greyjoy, and I will not see the Ironborn scattered like driftwood. I will sail with our forces to join the young wolf. Together we will retake the Westerlands, the Fair Islands, and every castle we have lost. The Kraken will rise from the depths and crush all who defy us.
I am Victarion Greyjoy, brother to Balon. The Reach dared to interfere in our war. The Red Wines think they can challenge the Kraken. Allow me to lead you, and I shall have this dishonor punished. I will retake the Fair Isles and burn their fleet to the waterline. Then I shall take the Iron Fleet to the Arbor and burn their fleet at anchor there, as I did with Tywin Lannister's flotilla. Then I shall ruin his merchant ship, down to the last fishing skiff. Their wine will run red with their blood. Only then shall I consider this wrong avenged.
The crowd roars at his words, axes raised high. For a moment, it seems like Victarion has the crowds, but Euron's laughter cuts through the noise, cold and mocking. He steps forward, his presence dominating the hill.
Is that all you want? A few castles, a ruined island, and vengeance on a vineyard? The Ironborn were not made for scraps. We are the storm. The sea is ours to command, and it does not stop at the shores of Westerlands.
And what is your grand vision, Crow's Eye? Conquer the Reach and provoke the might of the Greenlands? My father did the same, and look where it got us. The young wolf will not fight your war.
The young wolf is a pup, and certainly no ally. We are the Ironborn. We have no equals, no allies, only subjects. Why stop at the Westerlands, when all of Westeros could be ours?
You're mad. The Ironborn cannot conquer all of Westeros.
The fool Renly is dead, as is the boy King Joffrey. His grandfather cowers in Duskendale, far from home. Stannis squats in his capital with a ruin of a fleet. Who is there to oppose us? I will give you more than revenge, more than gold. I will give you everything. The Reach, the Riverlands, the Stormlands, the Crownlands. Every inch of Westeros will bow to us, or it will burn. Who will stand with me?
The Ironborn roar in unison, their axes pounding against shields. The air trembles with their cries. The name Euron shouted over and over. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.